Good morning and welcome back to Equity TV. I'm Francis Mayer, the Sports Information Director and Multimedia Outreach Specialist for Bakersfield College. Over 100 years, over a century of history at Bakersfield College, a century of changing people's lives with education, experience, and mentorship. Right now we're going to check in with a very special professor, someone who taught me English many years ago. And Dave, I've gone on to make a little money with it, so thank you. I'll get you your 10% soon.
Okay.
Your name's Dave Moton, and tell us what you do at Bakersfield College.
I am a professor of English. I teach composition, and I'm the one who harshly writes things in red ink on people's papers.
Yeah, but you do a lot of writing, man. Like when you were my professor, you just did the red ink, a lot on mine. But you went on and you wrote a textbook?
I did. I co-wrote a textbook with Gloria Dumler, one of my colleagues there. She was actually, when I started college, I was a less than stellar student and a less than stellar writer, and Gloria was my tutor when I was at Cal State, and we both ended up at BC together many years later, and we co-wrote a book called Navigating America for McGraw-Hill in New York, a national textbook, and yeah, we did that. Came out in 2010.
And that just goes to show how far people can come at BC. And Dave, we'll go back and look into your own history for a minute. I don't know necessarily, save for one factor, which is that your parents were educated, that you were really on a path to work in higher education. Were you?
I was very far from said path. I grew up in Michigan, in Battle Creek, Michigan, Cereal City.
Yes.
Home of Kellogg's and General Mills and Post, and pretty much everyone who lived there was going to work in a factory. They were going to work in one of the cereal factories.
Could you hear the
Oh yeah,
like shift change horn?
Hear it. More than that, you would smell, which was fantastic, massive like 10-ton batches of burnt dog food that would saturate the air of Battle Creek. That was always a pleasant experience. But no, it was very much a factory town, and they had, I mean, God bless them, they had a really amazing vocational center. They had Kellogg Community College, which was probably a third the size of the vocational college that was right across the street from it. And I spent 2 years, my last 2 years of high school, I spent a lot of time doing culinary education instead of actual, book education. They would let you spend half a day at the high school and then half a day in your trade, whether it was like, electricity, plumbing, hair, whatever. And I was going to be a cook. But then my sister abducted me and dragged me to California and pulled some strings for a dean that she worked for and got me accepted at Cal State Bakersfield, and everything has been different ever since.
Wow. And her story is a little interesting, just to diverge for a minute. Your story touches on a lot of interesting pop culture notes. For some reason, very interesting people have crossed through your life, from Rob Van Dam of ECW and later at WWE, correct?
Currently, yeah.
At WWE. He was a friend of yours.
Yeah, we grew up together. We still text each other and make fun of each other on Facebook.
Right, but he's just Rob.
Right, he's just Rob. He's Rob Zatkowski.
Yeah, exactly, from Michigan.
The kid who used to pile drive me in front of the principal's office, and then we'd both get in trouble. But now he's Rob Van Dam, and he's a multimillionaire, and he's famous, yeah.
Yeah, funny deal. And then you have another friend, actually, one of Bakersfield's favorite children, although most of his work, he's unrecognizable.
Yes.
Derek
Mears.
Yes, Derek Mears.
Yeah.
He's actually from Bakersfield.
He's from Bakersfield.
He crossed into your life here.
Yeah.
And then your sister used to write for a television show.
She wrote for Blossom.
Yes.
Perhaps the world's worst television show, but I can't blame her for that. But she worked for Disney and Touchstone Television in Buena Vista, and she worked there for a couple years writing television scripts, and she realized very early on that wasn't something that she cared. It's too much hustle. Hollywood's more hustle than it is writing if you're a writer, and she wasn't in the mood for that. And she actually is a colleague of mine at Bakersfield College. She teaches English, and she loves it.
Now, but by the same token that I said that you weren't on a path for education, you were at the same time. Your upbringing was kind of slightly bohemian because both your parents were educated, right?
Yes.
And your background is even more interesting because your mother was white, and your father, and we'll show this picture later, your father was definitely black. He was African American. In this picture, he's actually with Martin Luther King Jr. when they were part of a black student union in Michigan, correct?
Yes, in Michigan,
okay.
Yeah, in Kalamazoo.
When you were growing up, was it hard to choose how you were going to identify? I mean, what was that like in Michigan?
It was pretty impossible, actually. I mean, I know a lot of people who have had, are of mixed heritage, and the mix was really divergent in my family. My mom was from a very wealthy family in Grosse Pointe, Michigan. She had stories as a child of like having dinner with the president of U.S. Steel in the 1950s. I mean, she was really upper class, white.
And Grosse Pointe is one of the wealthiest, or it was one of the wealthiest enclaves in the United States.
Yes, and it was all tied into,
General
Motors, Ford, all that stuff. That was where the executives would live. My grandfather was, he ran shipping through the Great Lakes, and he had a good amount of money. Interestingly, it turned out later that he also had ties with the Nazi Party and was perhaps smuggling Nazis into the country through the Great Lakes in his shipping.
Wow.
So it was a very...
Isn't that what that movie, A Hunt for Red October? No, I don't think it was about that, but
no,
close.
Not quite.
Close, yes.
Not quite.
All right.
But then on my father's side, he grew up in Flint, Michigan, which was one of the poorest areas.
In a labor pool for GM also.
Yes, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And he was through college, he was a civil rights activist. He was on a watch list for being in the Black Panthers. He, knew Martin Luther King from some of the stuff that he did. So they were pretty different, radically different families. And to try to find an identity in the middle of those really polar opposites was quite a challenge for, I think, myself and my brother and my two sisters. And to be honest, and it's one of the reasons I love education, it's one of the reasons I'm always proud to be a professor and I love Bakersfield College, is because I felt that college, for the first time in my life, was really a place where I fit in, because I no longer saw a campus that was split in half between black people and white people. I saw this campus and I'd be sitting in a room next to a Nigerian and a Russian and a white person and a black person and then a Hispanic, and then, oh, well, it's not quite that simple. I'm actually, from Nicaragua, not Mexico, and it's just this, and your professors are diverse and the people you're with are diverse, and you suddenly, and for a lot of people that's off-putting because they feel like they have no more culture at the core of where they are, and to me that was a value. To me that was really nice to feel like, oh, we're finally all in the same boat. And it really erased notions of race for me. And I think that's one of the best things that can come about college. And I know Bakersfield College, one of our big things, one of our mission statements, deals a lot with equity. And we want equity in the student body. We want equity in the faculty. And I think you find that. And I think it's one of the most valuable things any student can take from Bakersfield College or any college, is to suddenly leave their own small pool and realize there's a whole wide world out there, and they're sitting in the row right next to you in your classroom. That's one of the most valuable things, I think.
David, I think you have hit the nail on the head, and a person who finds you next to them at Bakersfield College is finding not just a deep pool of experience, but also a published author. The book is Chama, New Mexico. And if you can stay with us for one more segment, I'd like to talk about how you became an author and went from that guy who was in a vocational cooking school with his crazy sitcom writing sister and came out to California and planted the Moton family flag.
I'd love to talk about it.
Don't go anywhere. We've got more Equity TV coming up next.